and welcome to another episode of Mythology Monday with me, your host, Alice Hanov. Now, if you haven't visited my channel before, Mythology Monday is where I talk about the different mythologies around the world that have inspired my debut novel, The Head, the Heart, and the Heir. And because I have 10 different sorcerer lines, there are a ton of different mythologies that have somehow infiltrated or worked their way into my world in general. And today we are going to be talking about the line of mystics, and so mysticism and mystics and how that has worked its way into the story. But along with that, we're going to touch on some history, because part of the mystics line was influenced actually by the historical figure Rasputin and all of the legends and lore that circles him and his life and that. So as I mentioned previously, when we were discussing the line of mystics, they were founded by people who had a lot of kind of like telekinetic or ability to read mind type powers. In Taurian, the mystic line is able to crack, which is their way of traveling and going from one place to another just by vanishing and reappearing. Mystic sorcerers are able to crack farther than other sorcerers, and the really strongest of them are able to crack someplace without ever having seen it, just by going into somebody else's mind and seeing their memory of a location or seeing a painting or a portrait of it. Whereas normal sorcerers are unable to do that. They can only crack to places where they have already visited or seen themselves in life. And the other thing that they can do is read people's minds, visit their dreams, this sort of thing. And so a lot of that came from the idea of mysticism, finding some higher power in some greater belief in the universe, and being able to just understand more than the people around you, and having like a higher plane of life and ability and thought process and that. So the mystics are a little more serious, a little more toned down in regards to aggression in the sorcerer world, but they are also a little bit ethereal, a little bit out of worldly, in that they understand things faster and they can see people's minds and they can share visions with people, and then that way they're able to comprehend things much faster and can see things from somebody else's point of view a little bit faster as well. And now how Rasputin plays into that specifically is, in my creative mind, in the world of Taurian, the line of mystics was actually founded by Rasputin. So I believe that the way my head, like I always say that I take fact and then I interpret it and twist it and make it what I want it to be. And in my world, what happened was Rasputin fled Russia in his historical time period and everything, and ended up in Taurian, in this other world, because he had such mystic powers and had these followers that also had these great mystic powers. And with that, they were able to crack or take themselves out of our plane and put themselves into this other world, which is actually the world of Taurian. And so because Rasputin is known for having these magical abilities and this like strength that the normal people in Russia at the time didn't have, this is how he plays into the mystics line in Sorcerers, is that the line was founded by Rasputin and his followers from Russia, and so they came over to Taurian with their ability to read minds and interpret people's dreams and go into people's dreams and that. And because only the strongest of his followers and himself, who had these unique gifts, came, they've just been heightened throughout the generations as they intermixed with other sorcerers who had similar type gifts where their minds could do things, or they had strength and things like that, and they've melded together to make sorcerers now in 17 generations after Rasputin, where the sorcerers have a really strong ability to read people's minds with just touching them. Think of like the Vulcan mind meld type thing, where they can touch them and they can take their dreams or go into their visions, or allow someone else to see their own visions depending on what it is they're trying to do. And they can also dream walk, so they can purposefully go inside of someone's mind, and when they're young and learning to harness this power, they sometimes accidentally do it. So they end up in what they think is their own dream, but it's actually somebody else's dream, and it ends up being kind of awkward at times. But along with that, the history of Rasputin and the kind of unknown that surrounds them is something that does still exist with the mystics, because while the sorcerers know exactly what the mystics are able to do at this time, it is one of those powers that is always evolving slightly with every generation. So it has different things in every generation. So while in book 2 you'll learn about Griffin, and while he's a mystic sorcerer, his father is a mystic sorcerer. His father's powers are slightly different than his own, and when he goes on to have children in the future, if they inherit his mystic powers, they will also have slightly different mystic powers than him, but to a larger different extent than what the normal sorcerer lines have. And so where the strengths fall, and every generation is having some kind of different way of reading minds and getting more in-depth people, some it's more feelings, or they're almost combining with like the Cassandra type powers. They can get a vibe about someone or sense something is going to happen, even though they can't tell the future and predict it. But so I really like the mystics because they aren't a very battle ready type power, but the fact that they can read people's minds allows them, if they choose to be kind, to be very empathetic and very helpful as a sorcerer. But if they go the opposite way, they can be very evil and conniving and like discover your greatest fear and use it against you. So they have the potential to be a wonderful and amazing power, but right now, or at least up to this point, it's typically been used for the not so good side, which I find very entertaining. So thank you for joining me on Mythology Monday, and if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so you don't miss any of my Mythology Mondays and my other fantastic videos to come. Have a good day and happy reading.